In the distant future, humanity had spread its wings across the stars, forging fragile alliances and bitter rivalries in the vastness of space. But nothing could have prepared Marcus, an ordinary human, for the moment he was about to face. It started as a routine diplomatic mission, one of many that sent humans to meet with alien species, trying to navigate the complicated politics of the galaxy. But this time, something was different. This time, he was summoned by the most powerful and feared being in the universe, the Alien Queen. The Queen's empire stretched across numerous star systems, her rule marked by an iron fist and a mind that outsmarted the greatest tacticians. She was known for her unmatched intelligence, her ability to play the long game, and her cold, calculated decisions. Many feared her, and those who didn't respected her power. Marcus was just a pawn in a much bigger game, or so he thought. When the call came, it wasn't an invitation. It was a command. The emperor of a neighboring system had requested human diplomats to visit the Queen, but none had ever seen her in person before. Few survived to tell the tale, and those who did were forever changed, either broken by her presence or forever in her debt. As Marcus stepped off the shuttle and onto the alien palace's floating platform, he couldn't help but feel a surge of both awe and fear. The palace was like nothing he had ever seen before. Shimmering towers of black glass reached into the stars, reflecting the galaxy in their smooth surfaces. The air around him was thick with the scent of alien flora, plants from worlds he had never imagined, let alone visited. His mind raced as he followed his guide, an intimidating-looking alien with eyes that seemed to pierce through him. This was no ordinary alien. These were the Queen's personal guards, and their loyalty to her was legendary. They led him through winding corridors, where the walls shimmered with an otherworldly glow. The air was cool, but the silence was deafening. Marcus felt as though he were walking into the heart of something he didn't fully understand, something that could crush him in an instant if he made one wrong move. Finally, they arrived at the Queen's throne room. He watched it first eventually. The throne was massive, larger than anything Marcus had ever seen. It was made of dark stone, but it was carved with intricate designs that seemed to shift and move when the light hit them. At the center of the room, seated high above everyone, was the Alien Queen herself. She was a towering figure, her presence commanding the entire space. Her skin was an iridescent shade of blue, shimmering in the dim light of the throne room. Her eyes were pools of liquid silver, sharp and intelligent, scanning the room with a quiet intensity. The air around her seemed to bend, as if the very universe had no choice but to bow before her power. When she spoke, her voice was a melody, though it carried the weight of centuries of rule. "You are human?" she asked, her gaze fixed on Marcus. He felt the weight of her words, but he managed to nod. "I am," he said, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. The Queen studied him for a long moment, her eyes narrowing slightly. "What is it that you want?" Her words were simple, but there was an undercurrent of something far more dangerous. This was no mere question. It was a test. She wasn't just asking him what he desired. She was asking what he truly valued, what his heart yearned for in the deepest corners of his soul. And Marcus, caught off guard, had only one thought in his mind. What could he say? The answer came to him like a whisper in the back of his mind. It was a dream he had held since childhood, since humanity had first made contact with alien races. It was a dream that seemed impossible, a dream that no one had dared speak aloud, a dream that the galaxy itself had long rejected. "I want peace," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I want a galaxy where all races, all species are equal." There was a long pause. The throne room seemed to hold its breath, as though the very walls were waiting for the Queen's response. Marcus felt the eyes of the guards upon him, their expressions unreadable. The Queen did not flinch, but her lips curled into the faintest of smiles. It was not a smile of kindness. It was a smile of curiosity. "Peace?" she asked, her tone amused. "And what makes you think such a thing is possible, human?" "I don't know if it is," Marcus replied, "but I believe it should be. I believe we all deserve a chance to live without war, without fear of being crushed by the powerful." The Queen's smile faded, and for a moment Marcus thought he saw something flicker in her eyes, something that was neither anger nor contempt, but something else. She leaned forward, the soft sound of her movement echoing through the room. "And you would give up everything for this?" "Peace?" she asked, her voice now low, almost intimate. "You would throw away your position, your life, your very being, for a dream?" Marcus felt the weight of her gaze, but he did not look away. "Yes," he said simply. "If it means that the galaxy can finally live as one, then yes." The Queen was silent for a long time, her silver eyes never leaving his. Marcus didn't know what she was thinking, but he knew one thing for certain. He had just done something no one had ever dared do before. He had spoken the truth that everyone else had been too afraid to voice. When she finally spoke again, her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "You are bold, human. Bold enough to dream of what others cannot. But you will soon find that dreams are dangerous things in this galaxy. If you truly wish to see your dream come to life, you will face a battle unlike any you've ever known." Marcus swallowed hard, his heart racing. He had no idea what the Queen meant by her words, but one thing was certain. This was no ordinary diplomatic mission. This was the beginning of something far bigger. Something that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. The Queen stood up, her eyes never leaving his. "We shall see if your dream is worth the price you will pay for it," she said, her voice carrying the weight of destiny itself. And with that, the galaxy's most powerful ruler turned her back on Marcus, leaving him to ponder the price of peace. The days following Marcus's unexpected encounter with the alien Queen were a blur. At first, he thought he would return to Earth, the mission over and done with. But as time passed, he realized this was far from over. The Queen's words echoed in his mind, a reminder of the impossible challenge he had taken on. The day after his meeting with the Queen, Marcus was summoned again. This time, he was led to a different part of the palace, a more secluded area, where the air was thick with the scent of alien flowers and strange, humming machinery. It was quieter here, but that did nothing to ease the tension that gnawed at his insides. The atmosphere was heavy with uncertainty. As he walked through the long metallic corridors, his thoughts raced. What had the Queen meant by her cryptic words? The price he will pay for it. What did she want from him? And, more importantly, what had he gotten himself into? He couldn't shake the feeling that he had just stumbled into a game much larger than anything he could have imagined. The Queen was no ordinary ruler. She wasn't interested in the petty politics of diplomacy or trade. She wanted something much more than a simple agreement, something that might change the entire galaxy. The guards who escorted him were silent, their expressions unreadable. They were like shadows, moving without a sound, and it made Marcus feel even more out of place. Everything here was alien. The technology, the structure, the people, everything. It was a world he didn't belong to, and yet, here he was, standing at the heart of it. When he finally arrived at his destination, a massive room with high ceilings and intricate patterns on the walls, he was greeted by the Queen herself. She stood at the far end of the room, watching him with her piercing silver eyes. There was something unsettling about her gaze, something that made Marcus feel small, like a bug under the microscope. "You are bold, human," the Queen said as he approached, her voice calm and measured. "But boldness alone will not be enough to achieve the peace you seek." Marcus swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "You asked me what I wanted, but now I'm asking you, what do you expect from me?" The queen's lips curled into a small smile, but there was no warmth in it. I do not expect you to succeed. Few ever do, and even fewer would dare try. But I believe you are different, human. You have something that no one else in this galaxy has. Marcus furrowed his brow, confused. What do you mean? You speak of peace, the queen said. You speak of equality, of bringing together races that have fought for eons. But what you don't understand is that peace does not come without sacrifice. Every step forward comes with a price, and some sacrifices are greater than others. Marcus hesitated. What kind of sacrifices? The queen turned away, walking toward the massive windows that overlooked the stars. I will give you power, she said, her voice soft but firm. You will have the resources, the influence, the army needed to make your dream a reality. But there will be those who will resist. There will be factions who do not wish for peace. They will fight you. They will try to destroy everything you've worked for. She turned to face him again, her eyes locked onto his. And when they do, you will have to decide. Will you uphold your ideals, even if it means destroying your enemies? Or will you sacrifice your vision, your dream, for the sake of survival? Marcus felt a cold chill run down his spine. This wasn't what he had expected. He had imagined speeches, discussions, the slow and steady work of diplomacy. But the queen was offering him something far more dangerous. Power. Power that could reshape the galaxy, but at a price. The queen's gaze never left him. I will help you, she continued. But know this, human. Peace is not something given. It must be taken. And sometimes, taking it requires making sacrifices that are more than you are willing to give. Marcus stared at her, his mind spinning. Was he ready for this? To fight for peace? To wield power in a galaxy that had never known true peace? He had no answers, only more questions. But one thing was clear. This was no longer a simple diplomatic mission. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy itself. The choice is yours, the queen said softly. You will have what you need, but you must decide how to use it. I can't make that choice for you. With that, the queen turned her back on him once again, signaling the end of their meeting. Marcus stood there, stunned by the gravity of what had just been laid at his feet. He had asked for peace. The queen was offering him a chance to achieve it, but at what cost? As he left the room, the weight of her words hung over him like a dark cloud. Peace. It was a simple word, but one that carried so much weight. He had wanted it. He had dreamed of it. But now that it was within reach, he wasn't sure if he was ready to pay the price for it. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Marcus was given access to the Queen's resources, advanced technology, military forces, and intelligence. He was introduced to the leaders of various factions, some eager to see the galaxy united, others deeply suspicious of any attempt at peace. He spent countless hours in meetings, formulating plans, learning the intricacies of galactic politics. But the more he learned, the more he realized how difficult this task was going to be. The factions were not going to give up their power willingly. They would fight to maintain control, to keep the galaxy in the state it had always been, divided and at war. One day, as Marcus sat in a large conference room, studying a map of the galaxy, he was interrupted by one of the Queen's advisors. The leaders of the Koran coalition have refused to meet with you, the advisor said. They believe your message of peace is a trick. They fear the Queen's true intentions. Marcus sighed. This wasn't going to be easy, but he knew he couldn't give up. He had to keep pushing forward, no matter the cost. As the advisor left, Marcus stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the vastness of space. He thought back to the Queen's words. Will you uphold your ideals, even if it means destroying your enemies? He wasn't sure if he was ready to make that choice. But one thing was certain. If he wanted to bring peace to the galaxy, he would have to fight for it. And that fight was going to be harder than anything he had ever imagined. The next morning, Marcus received an unexpected message from the Queen herself. It was brief, but to the point. "Prepare yourself. The Choron Coalition is planning an attack."
They believe they can crush us.
Marcus clenched his fists. The peace he had dreamed of was slipping further away with every passing hour, but he knew what he had to do. He couldn't let fear or uncertainty hold him back. This was his chance to make a difference, to prove that peace was worth fighting for, even if it meant risking everything. And so, with a heavy heart, he began to prepare for the battle ahead. The galaxy would be watching. The Queen had given him power, and now he had to use it. The path to peace would not be easy, but it was the only path worth walking. The days after Marcus received the Queen's message were filled with tension and uncertainty. The Choron Coalition had refused all attempts at diplomacy, and now they were preparing for war. It was no longer a matter of trying to bring the galaxy together through peaceful negotiations. The reality of conflict was right at their doorstep, and Marcus knew there was little time to waste. He stood in the Queen's command center, surrounded by displays of galactic maps and military reports. The hum of machinery filled the room, but it seemed distant compared to the weight on his shoulders. The Queen, as calm as ever, sat at the head of the room, her eyes focused on the display in front of her. Her advisors were gathered around her, all whispering in hushed voices, exchanging strategies and plans. Marcus had been given command over a small fleet of ships, the most advanced technology in the galaxy at his disposal, but no amount of advanced weaponry could change the fact that the Choron Coalition was one of the most powerful and ruthless factions in the galaxy. They believed in the old ways, where strength and dominance were the only things that mattered. Peace was a concept they could never understand. The Queen turned to him, her silver eyes studying him carefully. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady but carrying an undertone of something more, something like expectation. Marcus nodded, though his mind raced. The decision he had to make weighed heavily on him. The Queen had offered him the power to fight, but what would it cost? Was peace truly worth this much bloodshed? "We can't let them destroy everything we've worked for," Marcus said quietly, his voice firm. "We have to stand our ground." The Queen gave him a small nod, her lips curling into the faintest smile. "I knew you would say that." But Marcus wasn't sure what he had signed up for anymore. This was no longer a diplomatic mission. This was war. His task had become far more complex than he had ever imagined. He had once dreamed of a galaxy united, where people and species could coexist peacefully, but now he was leading a fleet into battle, knowing that his actions would result in lives lost, regardless of how hard he fought for peace. The command center was alive with activity as officers prepared for the upcoming battle. Marcus stood back watching them work. He couldn't help but wonder if he had made a mistake. Maybe he wasn't the right person for this job. Maybe the dream of peace was just that, a dream. Something impossible to achieve in a galaxy ruled by conflict and distrust. But then, as if to remind him why he had taken this path in the first place, a message arrived from one of his fleet commanders. "Sir," the voice crackled through the intercom. "The Choron fleet is approaching. They're ready for a full-scale attack. We need to prepare for battle." Marcus inhaled sharply. This was it. There was no turning back now. The future of the galaxy rested on his shoulders, and there was no room for hesitation. He walked over to a communications console and sent out the orders to his fleet. They would not attack first, but they would be ready to defend themselves. The Choron Coalition had started this war, but Marcus would finish it. As he watched the fleet mobilize, a sense of determination settled over him. He had come this far, and there was no going back. He wasn't going to let the Choron Coalition dictate the future of the galaxy. He would fight for peace, even if it meant risking everything. Hours passed, and soon the Corran fleet was within range. Marcus stood in the command center, his eyes fixed on the display, watching as the enemy ships approached. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone knew what was at stake, and everyone understood the gravity of the situation. The Corran ships were massive, their dark hulls intimidating as they closed in on Marcus's fleet. The sight of them sent a ripple of unease through the crew. The Corran were known for their ruthlessness, their willingness to destroy anything and anyone in their path. Marcus could feel the weight of their gaze, the understanding that they were prepared for anything. They were prepared to win, no matter the cost. "Ready the weapons," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. He had to stay focused, even though his heart was racing in his chest. This was the moment he had been dreading, but it was also the moment that would define him. He turned to the Queen, who stood by his side, her expression unreadable. "Are you sure this is the only way?" he asked. The Queen met his gaze, her eyes full of unspoken understanding. "There is no peace without sacrifice, human. You will see that for yourself soon enough." Marcus didn't respond. He couldn't argue with that. He had already made the decision to fight, and now he had to follow through. There was no turning back. The battle began suddenly with the deafening roar of weapon fire. The first few blasts hit the fleet, and the chaos erupted in an instant. Marcus watched the battle unfold before him, his mind focused as he gave orders and directed his fleet to engage. The sounds of explosions filled the room, and the crew around him worked quickly, responding to the chaos. The Corran fleet was powerful, but Marcus had the advantage of strategy and the support of the Queen's advanced technology. He knew that if they could hold their ground long enough, they might be able to force a retreat. The longer they could keep the Corran at bay, the more they could push for a peace negotiation. But things didn't go as smoothly as he had hoped. The Corran fleet wasn't retreating. Instead, they pressed forward with relentless force. Their ships moved like shadows, firing precise strikes that crippled Marcus's fleet, one ship at a time. It was clear that the Corran would not back down. They intended to win at all costs. Marcus's heart raced as he watched the battle unfold. The weight of his decisions was crushing him. Was this the price of peace? Was this what he had to do to make a difference? Was he truly willing to sacrifice so many for the chance to create a better future?
As the battle raged on, Marcus felt a strange calm settle over him.
He had no choice but to keep fighting. He had no choice but to continue pushing forward, even when it seemed impossible. This was his moment to prove himself, to show the galaxy that peace was worth fighting for, even if it meant losing everything he held dear. The fighting lasted for hours, with both sides taking heavy losses. Marcus's fleet had taken more damage than he had anticipated, but they held their ground. The Corran had underestimated his resolve, and that was their mistake. Slowly, the Corran began to retreat, their ships pulling back into the depths of space. Marcus watched them disappear into the distance, his breath coming in short gasps. The battle was over, but the cost had been high. He had won, but at what price? As he stood there, staring at the wreckage of the battlefield, Marcus realized something. The fight for peace wasn't over. This battle had been just the beginning. The Corran would not forget their defeat, and they would come back. But now, Marcus had something he didn't have before: hope. The galaxy had seen that peace could be achieved, even if it meant fighting for it, and that was something worth fighting for. The silence in the aftermath of the battle was overwhelming. The hum of the remaining ships in Marcus's fleet was the only sound that filled the command center. They had won, but it didn't feel like a victory. As he stood before the screen, Marcus watched the stars stretch out in front of him, their beauty almost mocking him. The galaxy was still broken, and he knew that the price of this battle had been higher than anyone could have imagined. The Corran coalition had retreated, but that didn't mean the war was over. The leaders of the coalition were not the types to accept defeat quietly. It was only a matter of time before they regrouped and came back stronger. Marcus knew that. Everyone knew that. The battle he had fought was just a temporary reprieve, not the end of the conflict. Turning away from the screen, Marcus walked over to the large window that overlooked the stars. He could see the wreckage of destroyed ships floating in space. Some were Koran, others were his own. The sight filled him with a strange mix of anger and sadness. He had hoped that there could be a way to stop the violence before it reached this point, but he had failed. No matter how many battles he fought, no matter how many victories he claimed, the galaxy's wounds ran too deep to be healed by force alone. "Sir?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see one of his officers standing at attention.
"The Queen has requested your presence." Marcus nodded and followed the officer through the corridors of the ship. His mind was still racing, processing the battle and the cost of it.
He hadn't expected this kind of toll. No one had. When he reached the Queen's chamber, he was surprised to find her alone. She stood by the window, gazing out at the stars, much like he had just a moment ago. Her expression was unreadable, as always, but there was something different about her today. For the first time, she seemed distant. "Do you ever wonder if it's worth it?" Marcus asked, his voice quiet as he stepped into the room. The Queen turned to him slowly, her silver eyes meeting his. "You mean the fighting?" she asked, her tone soft but not without a hint of curiosity. Marcus nodded. "I thought we could create peace, but all we've done is make the war worse. I led people to their deaths today. I don't know if I'm the right person for this." The Queen didn't respond right away. She walked over to a nearby table and picked up a holographic image of the galaxy. It glowed softly in her hands, displaying a map of the systems that were now under her control, with Marcus's fleet positioned at key locations. The image showed the damage from the recent battle, the small pockets of resistance still scattered across the galaxy.
"You are not the only one who has had to make difficult choices," she said, her voice thoughtful. "But you must understand something, Marcus.
Peace is not something that can be achieved without sacrifice. It's not about making the right decisions. It's about making decisions and seeing them through, no matter the cost." Marcus looked at her, his mind struggling to keep up with the weight of her words. He had always thought of the Queen as someone who was cold, calculating, and ruthless. But now, he saw something different in her. She had her own doubts, her own fears, even if she never showed them. "I never wanted to become a part of this war," he said, his voice full of frustration.
"I never wanted to be someone who orders people to fight and die for an idea. I thought we could do this without the bloodshed."
The Queen placed the holographic image back on the table and turned to face him fully. "Do you think the galaxy has ever known peace without bloodshed?" "No, Marcus. The history of the galaxy is filled with conflict. It is built on it. Peace. Peace is a fragile thing. It is a dream that we chase, but one that always seems to be just out of reach." She walked closer to him, her eyes never leaving his. "I have seen the wars. I have seen entire civilizations fall to ashes because they did not understand that peace must be earned. And that comes with a price. We may fight and we may lose, but if we do not fight, we will never achieve anything. If we do not fight, the galaxy will remain a place where only the strong survive and the weak are crushed." Marcus felt the weight of her words. They were harsh but true. He had been naive to think that peace could be achieved without sacrifice. He had been naive to think that he could change the galaxy with only his ideals. The reality of what he had been asking for had finally set in. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice tinged with exhaustion. The Queen looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Now, we prepare for what comes next. The Koran will not give up easily. They will regroup, they will rebuild, and they will strike again. But we will be ready. We will strike first, and we will win." Marcus didn't know how to respond. The words were simple, but they carried a weight he wasn't sure he could bear. He wasn't ready for another war. He wasn't ready for the endless cycle of violence. But he knew that if he didn't fight, if he didn't continue to push forward, then the galaxy would remain fractured, torn apart by the very forces he had hoped to unite. And so, despite his doubts, despite the pain in his heart, Marcus knew what he had to do. The fight was far from over. The Karen were only the beginning, and if he truly wanted to create peace, he would have to keep fighting. The Queen's voice broke through his thoughts once again.
You are not alone in this, Marcus. You may not understand it yet, but you are a symbol of something greater.
You are the spark that can ignite the fire of change, but you must choose whether you will let that fire burn brightly or let it die out.
Marcus took a deep breath. He had made his choice. He would fight, not for glory, not for power, but for the dream of peace that still lived in his heart. He would keep fighting, no matter what.
I'll do it,
he said quietly, his voice full of determination.
I'll keep fighting.
The Queen gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod.
Then we begin again.
And this time, we will finish what we started. Marcus looked out at the stars once more. The road ahead was uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure. Peace might be a dream, but it was a dream worth fighting for.